In these next few videos, I'll bring you along into how I actually build apps myself as a head of design and show you from the easiest to the most advanced and complex ways of building not only a website, but even a mobile app, an iPhone app, or even a Mac app. So let's get into it. We're going to be building a super simple cooking timer. And we're going to be building it in a couple of different ways, from easiest being a website to the most advanced being an iPhone or Mac app. The first step though that I want to show you today is the planning step. Why do I care about the planning, and why would I strongly encourage you to actually take the time to do the planning? Well, I think it's important at the beginning to make yourself clear what is the context, what is it that you're trying to build. I think it's important that is clear not only to yourself, but also that you are thus able to express it in a clear and concise way to an LLM. Because only if you are able to do that, you will actually get the results that you'd expect. The models are so good these days that if you don't get the outcome that you were hoping for, it's very likely just an issue of you not being clear enough, the prompt not being good enough. So in this case, what are we building? We are building a super simple cooking app for my pasta. It should just allow me to start an 8, 10, 12 or 40-minute timer, depending on the type of pasta which I'm going to eat. Super simple. I'll make it even more precise as we go on, using ChatGPT or something to actually improve the prompt that we then give to Lovable or Claude or whatever. But for the moment being, what is the end goal? That is another important point. In this case, what I'm going to be showing you is how would I approach building an app for myself or for people that are close to me, friends and family. It's not the same if you're actually trying to build something that you want to monetize, that you want or that you expect thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to use. And for instance, when I, as a head of design in my day job, actually think about building features, which will, be in the hands of hundreds of thousands of kids and students in the coming days, I go about this a bit differently. That being a small caveat. So here, my end goal is to build a personal app just for myself. It's supposed to be a simple web prototype and nothing else. And that is what we'll give as context to Lovable or Figma Make or Cursor or Claude down the line. The next thing that I would suggest is to do a bit of research and scoping. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? The super simple problem in this case would be just build a cute and reliable cooking timer that I can use to cook pasta. It's supposed to make me smile. That's it. Another important thing is to think about which features would you like to have in the MVP. So in our case, it would be a simple 10-minute countdown timer. Ability to set different time frames. A simple HTML, CSS website, which is basically the simplest kind of website that you could potentially build. It's also important to be clear to yourself and also to the models that you're working with what is actually specifically out of scope. So in this case, for instance, I think I don't need multiple timers in parallel. I also don't need something like multiple tabs and privacy policy. I also don't need fancy animations. I think this is it. The more we can break it down and the more we can simplify it and minimize the amount of features to include, especially in the MVP stage, the better. Another thing which I would strongly recommend is to take a bit of time to think about how do you want the app to feel? How do you want it to look? So in this case, for instance, I went ahead and looked at Mobbin, which is a great site to actually gather inspiration from other apps. I went to the App Store. I would also recommend going to Behance or Dribbble. I'll link these websites below. And so for instance, in my case, I had a look at one app that I really liked, which is called not boring timer. And I really like it because it's very bold. The numbers are extremely big and hence easy to read from afar, which might be nice if you're cooking and your phone is all the way across the room or something. Another app which I really love, which is called Cream. And I loved the simplicity of the timer here, as well as the ability to repeat a given timer. Not sure if we need it for our sakes, but I hadn't thought about it, so that was nice. And finally, there was this part about how do we set the timer? How do we set the amount of minutes, for instance, in this case? And do we need to be able to set more than minutes? For my sake, most of my pasta takes less than 16 minutes or so. And I don't really care if it's 10 minutes, 30. I'll just put 10 and let it, sit a bit longer. So in my case, for instance, I would go for something a lot simpler. So in this case, trading off granularity for the sake of simplicity. And I think this is what looking at other apps really gives you. It gives you some nudges. How did other people go about solving this issue? What can I take away from that? What do I like? And what might I want to do in a similar way? What don't I like and would like to, improve for my specific app that I'm building? The last step for me would usually to be look at different types of colors which go well together and have a sort of scheme that I can then screenshot and give to GPT or Claude or Lovable once I actually start building. One app that I stumbled upon this morning is called Pool Suite. And for some reason, it really stuck with me. And I want to use a similar kind of UI and color scheme in this small, simple cooking app. It looks to me like a website from the end of the 90s. And I really love how they, across the entire website, they have this warm color palette and they have this pixelated style across the app. So I would, in this case, for instance, take a screenshot over here and then add that to my mood board. Finally, something else that I would suggest is to go into a tool like Colorant and look at what palette speaks to you. So for instance, if we're going after this 90s style, I would want something a bit retro looking. And I don't know you guys, but I actually kind of like this one. And so I'll just take a screenshot here as well, super quickly, and give that as context to GPT and Claude.
As a cherry on top, I often like to add a personal touch to make my app come alive by drawing some illustrations by hand for the logo and avatar, for instance. Let me show you how you can do the same thing super easily.
Let's draw a super simple penguin. I'll just draw a quick rectangle. Whoops. Doesn't need to be perfect, by the way. This is just intended to be a guide for ChatGPT to do its magic and create a bit of personality inside of the app. Some small feet. Let's add a bit of texture. You can do this fast, no need to be super precise. And then let's add some eyes, super simple ones. And that's it. Now that we're done, the last thing is to just take a picture. And now I'll share that with GPT. Now that we have the image of the penguin, which is not, the greatest work of art, but it's a good starting point, I would go to Sora and paste it in here. Sora is basically ChatGPT's image generation platform, which is a bit optimized for that. And in my case, it's still one of my preferred ways of actually generating images. And what I also like is that sometimes it's a great source of inspiration. So for instance, I like this cartoonish style and I'd like something similar. So I'll copy the prompt and then together with my image, I'd say a cute penguin looking excited because it's about to get food, I guess, I would hope. And then click on remix. And after 30 seconds or so, you will then have a couple of images being generated. And what's cool as well is that it always provides you 2 different images. In my case, the first generation was this one. And it's not perfect, but I kind of like the style and I kind of like the UI. And I iterated a tiny bit. This one looks slightly different, but it's fine. I like how this one's walking towards the camera. If we, were to mirror the image, we could almost emulate it like moving, which could be nice if you had a countdown. And this one is the final one, which we just generated, which would be a lot more playful. Maybe this is another direction which we can try. This is how I would go about creating an avatar, which you can not only use as part of the icon or something if you were to build an actual app, but you can also use it for things like a loading state. These small touches actually bring your app, in my opinion, to a slightly different level, a more personalized level, and give it this sort of human touch, which I quite like. So after 10 minutes or so, what do we have? We have these summary slides, which we can take screenshots of and give them to ChatGPT or Claude or Lovable or whatever else to then do a much better job in generating the app that we want. And in the process, I think we also clarified the idea, which we initially had a bit blurry in our heads, and put it on paper. So now we know what the end goal is, which is just a simple web app for the very first beginning steps. We know what the issue is that we're trying to solve and what we explicitly are not trying to solve, which we also put in terms of features which are in and out of scope. We have some inspiration which we can give to GPT, as well as some visual direction which is more pixelated, and even different avatars to explore. I hope you found this useful. Keep posted for the next videos where I'll actually use all of these things, all of these screenshots, to, in the first place, get to an optimal prompt, which we can then use to build the website or even mobile or Mac app that we wanted to in the first place. And it's a playbook that you'll hopefully be able to replicate to all of your own projects down the line.